Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Monday, June 23rd, 2025. I am Dave Biddle, back in the saddle again. I'll be joined by Dan Rubin in just a moment. And thank you very much to Dan for covering for me all of last week. He's already doing the shows. He's my guest on the Monday shows, and he hosts Tuesdays and Thursdays. Well, he was the host for all 5 shows last week. So thank you, Dan, and we will hear from Dan in just a moment. We're going to get knee-deep in to recruiting on today's show. We're also going to take your questions. We'll talk a little bit about the 2025 Buckeyes with camp kicking off a little more than a month from now, which is crazy and awesome. Still basking. But huge recruiting weekend for the Buckeyes just wrapped up as far as official visits, uncommitted recruits, some big names. So we're going to let you know where we think Ohio State stands with some of those guys. And like I said, eventually we're going to take your questions. If you have any questions, just put them there in the queue. All right, let's bring in my man, Dan Rubin. Good to see you, sir. Thank you very much for your hard work last week.
As always, I hope the state up north treated you well.
It did. I was rocking Ohio State gear. I saw other Ohio State fans that were basking. We took a little boat trip, a 2-hour. They call it a cruise, a little 2-hour cruise on Lake Superior. Never seen Lake Superior before. We're in the Upper Peninsula. For those who are wondering, what are you doing vacationing in Michigan? Upper Peninsula has a lot of Spartan fans. Apparently a lot of Buckeye fans were up there too, at least enough. In fact, the people that were right next to us getting on the boat, we saw this place called Pictured Rocks on Lake Superior. It was beautiful. The people that were getting on us right before us also were decked out on Ohio State stuff. So we're up there representing in the northern or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. All right, let's start with Luke Fahey. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Fahey. He's a quarterback. He had his official visit this past weekend, and he got offered by the Buckeyes yesterday. Bill Kurelic was all over this. So Luke Fahey, not a big quarterback, Dan Rubin. He's 6 foot, 185. Now, you never know if he's grown since then, but listed at 6 foot, 185 in our database. He's the number 23 quarterback in the country, according to the composite. 24/7 Sports in-house has him a little lower, has him at the number 30 quarterback in the country. He's from Mission Viejo, California. Like I said, the Buckeyes offered him yesterday. It feels like it's kind of like a bridge year with quarterbacks, with getting Tavian, the 2 studs that are kind of bracketed there. So, what do you think about the Buckeyes offering Luke Fahey, and do you think he'll be a Buckeye?
You mentioned the bracketing. The other side of that bracket would be Brady Edmonds.
Edmonds, right.
The quarterback from California who was here for camp and stuff. Fahey, very interesting prospect, and I think you nailed it in that if you look at the other schools that are going after him, it may not be on the same level as some of the other dudes they've chased. You were up in Michigan. Most of the best quarterbacks in the country were in Ohio at Columbus working out. It was an unbelievable cavalcade of quarterbacks. Fahey was probably one of the lesser heralded dudes, but I think you nailed it in that it would be very difficult at this point, both from a scheme or a roster standpoint and here comes a theme, NIL standpoint, to break the bank for another quarterback. So if you're Ohio State and a decision is not going to be made on money, you would certainly want to be a quarterback there. So NIL is going to be themed throughout here. If this young man feels like he can come in and make an impact and has a chance to eventually get on the field, I think it's pretty unlikely this kid just wants to come and be part of the team and join Old Town High and just cheer for the Buckeyes. Excuse me, he wants to play. So that will come up at some point. I got to see this one to believe it. I'm one who didn't think they were going to get a quarterback of ilk, or at least that's not a nice thing to say, a quarterback who traditionally would commit to Ohio State in this section. But he's into it. And look, if you're going to go, most quarterbacks, it depends how responsible is probably not even the right choice of word, but if you're just being a complete businessman and you want to get better at being quarterback and you're not going to start as a freshman wherever you go, why not go to Ohio State for a year? Every quarterback who starts is going to transfer anyway, basically. So you go there, you take your shot, you learn from the best. If it doesn't work, you transfer out. That process has actually worked quite nicely for several. The one that's held up as the example had nothing to do with NIL, and now Doesn't matter because he makes about more. I think he's the highest paid person in the city of Cincinnati and Joseph Burrow. But transfers and quarterbacks is no big deal. If you really wanted to go where the best train, give it a shot.
Before we move on to other guys, we're going to get into the defensive ends, the D tackles that visited. It was a who's who of official visits at Ohio. And you also had several guys that are committed in the 2026 class that took their official visits too, which is great. They can help recruit, obviously. So we're going to get into the DNs and the DTs in just a moment who visited. All right. Question from YouTube. Dan, curious to get your take on this. So the question is, he says, so is Ohio State just not spending as much as other teams on their roster? It's funny how the narrative changes just 1 year later.
I was going to say, can we do nothing right, Dave?
Ohio State can't keep up. It's like, okay, it's so funny. I hear what he's saying, though. A lot of people, I'm not trying to make fun of the question. A lot of people have this question. Is Ohio State playing by the rules too much? You know, I've heard people say, well, we're playing by the rules and nobody else is. What do you make of this? Do you feel like Ohio State is just not spending as much or just over other schools just willing to overpay high school recruits, whereas Ohio State has a more, I don't know, detailed approach to it?
I get you. I feel like we're kind of trapped between two eras here in terms of our interpretation of the situation. When you say, and when we have said, and everyone says, oh, they're making this a professional situation, you've heard the term salary cap. Essentially what's happened is, so let's take it from a professional standpoint. What if the NFL had no draft? That's what you're getting right now. And then you got to make a decision on who you want to pay what on your team. So yes, Ohio State at the end may have not been willing to go above and beyond a normal offer. But why is that? So let's look at NFL free agency. Who tends to have to overpay to get better players to come to their team? Less attractive teams. Mm-hmm. Teams that don't offer you, let's say, a straight line to the Super Bowl, which you get at Ohio State, by the way, every single year. So what you're getting now is just kind of like an open season. So whereas the draft is very linear, easy to follow, all the salary slots, salary cap maneuvers, and it's slotted. What you've got now is imagine, and people have pushed for this. There are people who really think the NFL and the NBA should work this way, where you just have open season and take whoever you want. I will continue to say this. No. The reason those teams have to do that and overpay is to make up for the fact that they're behind Ohio State. Ohio State doesn't have to do that. When your true number one thing you produce is high-quality NFL football players, that leads to winning, and it also leads to success. And that when people are getting it crazy, but we are the defending national champions. So they obviously did it right. Still basking, some specialize. So I don't understand the angst. You can't bring in an 18-year-old, I said this last week, into Ohio State's locker room and overpay him. And overpay just means maybe go above and beyond the market to guarantee you get him, unless it's Jeremiah Smith or Caleb Downs, where guys you bring in where even the most established seniors like, dude, that guy's an alien, pay him what you want. That's cool. You can't bring in a guy in there who's kind of a slacker, who's just kind of a flash in the pan type guy. You got to be right. Ohio State also just doesn't have to do that. I don't understand why people would want to overpay to do that when you've seen that having a correct locker room salary structure-wise has produced a national championship. The problem with the way we're doing it now is it's just not linear. You don't know when the next commitment's coming from. You don't know how much everyone's going to cost. No matter what Dave and I tell you here today about guys we feel good about, if someone comes in at the last second and offers them double, there's a chance they take it. Now, in the long run, is chasing what I would consider to be short money. And I've gone over this. You know, Luke Waffle chose to go to USC for, if you read the reports, and I say that in air quotes because we produce some of them, it's somewhere around $2.5–3 million over 2 years. Go look up how much money Cam Hayward's made. Go look up how much money Joey Bosa's made. Go look up how much money Nick Bosa's made. It's a combined over $400 million. It's not 1.5. So I get the idea of being financially independent at 19. That's great. I'll still say this. I'm confident in the long run, the guys that maybe took $1 or $2 less to come to Ohio State and invested in their professional future will thrive. And they always have. And if you can continually do that, and by the way, while you're winning the national championship, which by the way was the goal and will never be as hard as it was this year, things are going well. I'm not going to complain. They've earned the benefit of the doubt. At some point in time, you've got to stop being a worrywart. And to me, we've reached that point. I could be wrong.
And another thing that, we've talked about a lot, every Buckeye fan knows this, and it's been talked about for years, is Columbus, Ohio. If you're an Ohio State football player and you come here and you don't end up making it in the pros, Columbus, Ohio will take care of you. Like, you're going to get jobs, this is why, ex-players who maybe didn't even make it in the NFL, a lot of them they're not originally from Columbus. They might not even be from Ohio, and they end up living in Columbus because for various reasons. It's obviously fun to live here, and they know they're going to be taken care of. All right, let's look at some of these other top guys.
Dave, I want to comment on what you just said, because Bax and I discussed this last week, and it was Columbus specifically. The only other city that can really make an argument in the modern era to match Columbus for what it can offer is Austin. There's nobody else. There's not.
Right. People compare sometimes Ohio State to LSU, saying there's no other big. Now, I mean, Cincinnati's technically a Power 4, but whatever. For a while, it was like they're the only, LSU doesn't have another Power 4 as Power 5 at the time team in their state. Ohio State's same deal, like they're the Kings. Yeah, but Ohio's a lot bigger than Louisiana. And I mean, New Orleans, obviously LSU's in Baton Rouge, but I've always thought Austin and Columbus are very similar. Austin's a little bit bigger, but they're both booming. They're both you look at the top 10 most booming cities, or, top growth in the last 10 years, Austin and Columbus are on all of those lists. All right, let's look at some of the DNs, then we'll go to the D tackles. Okay, the 4-star DNs from Texas, high 4-star DNs from Texas that visited. Official visits, KJ Ford, Landon Barnes. The dean had some information on them. All right, what are you hearing on KJ Ford, or what are you reading? KJ Ford and Landon Barnes. What do we need to know?
These are the Duncanville guys, Duncanville, Texas. Amari Abor came from there. Well, that didn't work out great. But, this was also kind of like the spy hunter effect, it felt like, from the Luke Waffle story, depending on how much you believe of how that went down at the end. So this was a modern example in recruiting. The idea is that Luke Waffle verbally committed to USC. Ohio State topped it. In the interim, USC canceled their visit with Ford. Then USC freaked out, upped the offer, and got Ford cancel his visit to USC and came to Ohio. I don't even know anymore, dude. I will say this, what's interesting about those guys is it used to be we would look at things like number of visits, relationship built, and that still can be effective. But as we've learned as adults, a lot of relationships are based on the almighty dollar. And when Texas A&M, I'll tell you a state that doesn't have an issue with other colleges paying their players. It's the state of Texas.
Texas, yeah.
So any guys from Texas now, I got to be a little leery of. That said, if you look at, this is why everyone deserves case-by-case treatment, because I go to Riley Pettijohn, I go to Devin Sanchez, two elite prospects who chose Ohio State out of Texas, and there have been many more. But just the same, even DeCorian Moore, the fastest guy in Texas, we got into a slugging battle with him, and Oregon, tipped the scale.
Look at all the first-round draft picks they've had. I mean, in second round, they've had, Donovan Jackson is from Texas. He just went in the first round. Jeff Okudah was a number 3 overall pick in the draft. He was from Texas. J.K. Dobbins, second round, but from Texas. Mm-hmm. On and on and on. You mentioned Riley Pettijohn, Devin Sanchez. State of Texas has been very good to Ohio State. They've been very wise. You have to lock down the state of Ohio, and then, how about we also go to Georgia and get a bunch of good guys? How about we go to Texas and get a bunch of good guys? Florida has always been good to Ohio State as well. So now California as well. So they're tapping into all the big states. I love it. No question.
But Peyton Pierce is from
there. You go.
Texas. Baron Browning is doing great in the pros. there's no question if you come to Ohio State and stick it out, you're going to do well. Terry McLaurin is holding out for more money. Raise your hand if you thought Terry McLaurin was going to make $100 million as a pro.
That's true.
I was like, he's a great gunner on special teams. He's more than that. So it's just what we need to get adjusted to. And I totally grasp that people don't want to get adjusted to this, that the idea of not paying the players, but the idea of many of the decisions being based on money kind of takes away the romanticism of college football. I get it. Let's just win. You know what's fun?
Just
winning.
Basking.
I like to win. I get it that things are going to change, and they're changing rapidly.
I was basking
Ohio State's ready to rock. Yep.
I was basking in Michigan with Ohio State gear on. The weather was nicer than it's expected at this time of the year up there. It can be pretty cold at this time of the year. Usually up there, it was very nice and warm, and I was literally basking in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan about Ohio State. Yeah, we have nothing to worry about. Why? Because we're still basking. I know people are upset. They think like Ohio State's getting outbid. Let's just calm down. Ohio State's strategies, they're not going to, unless it's Jeremiah Smith, unless it's a generational talent, they're not going to go crazy on high school recruits. They're not going to give a kid $5 million. They're just not going to do it. And I like that. I would much rather allocate the resources to, we know Caleb Downs is a stud. Okay. If he wants X amount of dollars, we can make that happen. Okay. This recruit, we think he might be a stud 3 years down the road, but we know right now Caleb Downs is a stud. And they actually were able to get him for 2 years, get 2 more years of JJ Smith. You know, he's a stud. What does he want? Okay. We can make that happen for him. Last year with all these guys like Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau, all of them that normally probably would have turned pro, even if they knew they were a third round. Donovan Jackson even told the guys, he called Jack Sawyer, says, I'm turning pro. Told the coaches, I'm turning pro. Had a change of heart the next day. And look what happened to Donovan Jackson. He probably would have been a third-round pick, maybe. Fourth round, ended up being a first-round pick. I like what Ohio State's doing. Until it's proven that they don't know what they're doing, I trust Ryan Day. I trust Mark Pantoni. With someone earlier saying, in Pantoni, I trust. Exactly right. I think we have the best GM in college football.
No question.
If we don't have the best head coach, he's the second best. I would take Ryan Day over anybody, and I would take Mark Pantoni over everybody. I think Mick Marotti, for some reason, was getting a bad rap there for a minute. You don't hear that anymore. Ohio State was by far the fresher team of anybody they played in the postseason, the more physical team. So that's just another. I want to give respect to Urban Meyer too, because Ryan Day, he's the one that brought Ryan Day to Columbus. Obviously, what else did he do with the infrastructure Ryan Day inherited because of Mark Pantoni and Mick Marotti, who are Urban's guys? So Urban still has his fingerprints all over this program, and I love it. But hats off to Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni. And again, Dan, I'll turn it over to you. Until proven otherwise, I trust those guys profusely.
I want to hit a couple points there. One, I'm pointing to Herb. You may not be able to see him in the light.
I see my guy. I see Herb.
And his beautiful wife. You know what they're doing right there, Dave?
They're holding a trophy and they're basking.
They are basking. Thank you. 2 things. One, what do Caleb Downs, JJ Smith, and Devin Sanchez all have in common that we've seen in terms of overpaying guys? They're all about getting to the NFL. They're all about busting their butt. They are not. Yes, they're going to have to pay them the most, but this just in, the guys that you'd be willing to pay like that are the total package, mental, physical, pedigree, anything you want. Florida, Georgia, Texas, the best of the best. Okay, that makes sense. Those guys are guaranteed pros, okay? The Sanchez family, you know this from seeing them. And like I said, I feel like I work for them, but it's the best example.
Family,
it's the fairest example. JJ Smith, who's his uncle? Pretty sure. Caleb Downs, his dad definitely played against the Cowboys at running back. So that's important. Here's another thing. People talk about the guys who came back and we paid last year. The most impressive guys that came back were Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson. At any other program, your 2 sophomores that have been waiting in line to start find out they're not going to start till their senior year, and they don't bail and go to another college where it's a guarantee that other schools were saying to Kenyatta Jackson and Caden Curry, you come here and start day 1. So yes, we aren't going to get every single kid. This just in, we didn't get every single kid last year the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. It's just coming sporadically. We don't know now, like the factors. I told you, Satarvis offered example. Announced his commitment and then announced his 5 official visits, which is the topsy-turvy. But that's just how it is now. We can't look at things like, Dwayne was the best at picking up on your little scheduling quirks to know who's coming where. There's no way to do that anymore because at the last second, someone could come in and trump you. Do you think someone could have come in and trumped for Sanchez, for Smith, for Downs? Maybe.
They were close on Smith. You saw Ryan Day's reaction because the bidding kept going, blah, 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 blah. And that was one Ohio State was willing to get in a bidding war with because it was freaking J.J. Smith.
Well, time out. You just answered it. They were willing to get in the bidding war because it was J.J. Smith.
Right.
And
you
what
saw
are we complaining about here?
Press conference. He still didn't know. I still think it was probably because we're all looking at Ryan Day, obviously, like at the press conference. Somebody in the hallway in the team room, probably was Pantone or one of Pantone's assistants, gave him and all of a sudden in the middle of the press conference, Ryan Day, like knees buckled. It was a little bit for show too. But a lot of it for show, but he definitely felt super relieved, and now we know why. I was thinking, we've seen this before, big-time true freshman. They were saying Marvin Harrison's the best to come through here. He didn't really play much as a true freshman until the Rose Bowl. Caught 3 touchdowns. Only reason he even really played much in that game is because Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave sat out the game. Like, is this hype about Jeremiah Smith real? Oh, baby, it's real and spectacular. It's real and spectacular. All right, a couple things.
Hold on a sec, Dave.
Go ahead.
Have you ever seen Ryan Day do that ever again or before that? Okay.
Or before that, no.
So what are we saying here? Don't make the exception the rule.
Right.
If you try to make the exception the rule, you're going to end up not good.
Now, I want to be clear. These recruits, the big-time recruits that Ohio State is getting, we don't need to name names. They're being well taken care of. Are they getting every last penny that they possibly could if they went to the highest bidder? To your point, no, because they know they're getting a lot of money. They're in the place they want to be because the end goal is to make $100 million in the NFL, and to win a national title and do everything that comes with it. So you have to be competitive in NIL with recruits, but I like the way Ohio State does it. So again, until proven otherwise, you got a good question about the Wisconsin lawsuit against Miami I want to get to in a moment from Eddie on Facebook. Before we do that, as promised, I want to talk about the D tackles. We've been talking so much about D tackle recruiting. 2 4-star D tackles made their official visits to the Buckeyes this weekend. Damari Simeon from New Jersey. He's listed at 6'3", 275. Again, could be bigger than that by now. Then also from the pipeline of Swanee, Georgia, speaking of Cam Hayward and many others, defensive tackle Deuce Geralds. Do the Buckeyes have much chance with either one of these young men, in your opinion, Mr. Rubin? I guess they got on. I guess they were on campus.
Yeah, I guess I know. I spoke to Bill before the show to kind of bone up. Deuce Gerald's still not talking yet. He'll talk after the weekend. And our guy from Jersey, Deuce Gerald's, by the way, Sewanee Peachtree, Bradley Roby. One-time commitment to Vanderbilt, by the way, shockingly as that might have been. Defensive tackles are an interesting lot. So one thing in the NIL era that's happened is, and one of the reasons I sense some angst about defensive line is there just aren't as many good defensive linemen out there as some other positions. So naturally, their recruitments are going to go a little bit longer as the price goes up, up, and up. It's interesting also if you look at the schools that are being considered, a lot of these guys are considering the same few schools. So there could be a domino effect here, and it's kind of like take this offer, next guy gets this offer, and it kind of stacks up like that. If you notice in wide receiver recruiting, very few commitments among the 5-stars are made until Ohio State at least has 2, so everyone knows where the top spot is. That's just how it's worked. So right. I don't get my hopes up for defensive tackles right these days. The kid from New Jersey, I would be more I'm leery of both, to tell you the truth. Deuce Geralds has been a name it's one of those names that I've heard so many times that I'm kind of get the white noise vibe in my ear, if that makes sense. Like I'd like at least some sign of supreme interest. Yeah, with the defensive linemen, even the ends, I'm waiting that one out to the very, very end. because those are because there's very few of them, the domino effect could really kick in there, kind of like what we saw with the Luke Waffle thing, where if they think they're going to lose him, they've already got that kind of checked off. They're going to come in with some cash. So, and we don't have enough of a connection to those guys, in my opinion, that I've seen so far, that I think we could hold that off. So I'll wait on those.
Well, let's close the show with this. I find this very interesting. Glad somebody asked about this. Eddie Edwards, former Cincinnati Bengals defensive lineman, entering the chat. I don't think he probably is not. I used to love that name. The Bengals seriously did have a defensive lineman. He's kind of a D tackle / defensive end named Eddie Edwards. I always thought that was cool.
Let me guess, Eddie Edwards. Yeah, is he? Okay, I thought Eddie Edwards was our USC fan that's been lurking. Funny how the fans lurk. We're Michigan fans and the USC fans tend to come in here based on current events, but I digress.
Eddie Edwards, what do you got on Facebook? What do you guys make of the Wisconsin lawsuit against Miami? Yeah, for those that didn't hear, so a young man that was at Wisconsin, a defensive back, had recently signed a 2-year. He was already there, and then he signed another NIL deal, a new NIL deal. It was a 2-year deal, signed it, all that good stuff. Didn't even enter the portal, and then just left and went to Miami and enrolled in Miami in January. And Wisconsin is not messing around. They are suing. A lot of people are like, bad luck for Wisconsin. I've seen people say, how about Luke Fahey, focus on not sucking and not suing schools when you lose recruits. But you can make an argument either way here, man. A contract's a contract. And if we're going to try to have some structure here. You can't have kids signing 2-year NIL deals and then just completely, reneging on the deal and just going to not even entering the portal. I find it very fascinating. I don't know. I see why it's a kind of a bad look for Wisconsin, because they've been a joke for the last few years, especially the first 2 years of the Fickle era. And I still have no idea why he tried to go air raid and went away from Wisconsin's, like what they do best, man ball. Now they're finally going back to that, going back to their roots. But what do you make of this? It's a very interesting situation with Wisconsin suing Miami.
I find it interesting that wasn't it Bo Ryan that got sued for not letting the kid out of his transfer portal thing?
I think so, yes.
So Wisconsin can't decide if they're up or down, apparently. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't. If I was the AD, this would not be happening. I think it's a terrible look. It looks like sour grapes. You look soft. And I'm sorry, perception is reality when you're dealing with a sales piece like recruiting. So I wouldn't want to. I mean, I get it. What happens if they win the suit?
I think they just want to send a message because
what message?
That if this happens, players can't feel like you can just sign like an NIL deal, not even play by the rules. You're not entering the portal. You've actually signed this deal. It's a binding contract like anything else, and you're just going to just break the agreement. I think that's my gut feeling. They're not going to come out and say we're just doing this for show. That's what it feels like. There also could be, to your point about like sour grapes. Keep in mind who just got busted for some recruiting violations. Wisconsin. So they're probably thinking, really, we got it minor, nothing like Michigan's going to be facing. But seriously, they got hit with some like NCAA like minor violations, and they're probably thinking seriously. And then this happens. I agree with you though. I would not have signed off on that because it just makes you look petty. It makes you look weak.
Run it out. I mean, what's the best case scenario? They get the kid stays there who doesn't want to be there or whatever. I don't know, man.
Eddie's right. I should have mentioned that's the key. They're trying to, the Big Ten is backing them because you don't want a situation like everybody's tampering. Kid signs an NIL deal, it's past the portal, and then he just completely just acts like that didn't happen, and it is tampering. So it's like, yeah. And Bobby's saying, I don't know this for sure, but I'm going to believe Bobby on Facebook. He says the young man took cash up front. The collective
feels like trying to
if I'm Wisconsin, I try to have the collective sue and not us, Let their version of the foundation take care of it.
It would be one thing if Wisconsin was still basking and doing this, and even then, I don't think I would support it. They're not basking.
No.
So how many headlines have you seen about Wisconsin in the last month?
Yeah, not good stuff. This
one and that one.
Yeah, the NCAA, it wasn't even a big deal. I don't think it's really going to cripple them. They'll still be able to win 7 games a year, maybe. Man, that was like Wisconsin was like that next good Big Ten team, the Big Three. And for a while, Michigan really wasn't the Big Three with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. And then it was like Wisconsin was that next one, And
Look,
now
man,
with the Oregon and those guys coming in and some of the other, Wisconsin's not that next one anymore.
Wisconsin laid out a blueprint for you that they always had. They'll somehow take, they'll take some 5'9" white walk-on and turn him into like an NFL receiver somehow. How they always do that, I don't know. But they also showed they could protect the quarterback. And with the transfer portal the way it was, all you had to do was go out every year and get yourself a Russell Wilson, which they did, and they become a much better team. So I don't understand that mentality that they've done up there. I don't think that's a good approach. The one thing Wisconsin does is produce tremendous offensive linemen. Carson Hinsman, thank you very little.
Thank you very much. You're right. And Luke, I hope it works. I don't want it to work when Ohio State plays them. But like he's entering year 3 now. Now they're finally going back to that. But imagine if he started that right away in year 1. Because even at Cincinnati, he struggled his first year. They were 4-8 when he took over. It wasn't really his fault. Tommy Tuberville had basically already retired without telling anybody. he had it on cruise control. His that was his final job as a head coach was Tuberville. So Fickell took over kind of a depleted roster, but they went 4-8 his first year. And then they had great seasons, like really good winning percentage every year after that. So if he just would have come in and just been like, okay, we're going to take our lumps first year, maybe even the second year, but we're going to be ready to go in year 3. Now it's like they're starting over in year 3. So we'll see what happens. Didn't mean to go that deep into Wisconsin Badger football on the show today.
Speaking of which, Tuberville, was it Wisconsin that he left the kids at the dinner table to go to Cincinnati? Oh, no, it was Texas Tech. Yeah, that's a great story. Vote for that guy.
Oh, geez. Yeah, there you go. Sweet home Alabama. All right.
You literally got a call during a dinner with the recruits, went out to take the call and never came back.
Left. And the parents were there and everything. Classic. Just left. That's an all-timer.
Did he pick up the bill, Dave?
That's an all-timer right there. That's an all-timer right there. He had a dinner with recruits. Doesn't even say, like, hey, I got to leave. He's just vanished, evaporated.
Did he pay the check on the way out, or is he like, they can handle it? It's NIL. They already visited another place and got a $5,000 deal. No.
Hopefully, he had one of his minions stay back and pay the bill at least, or at least call the restaurant. I don't know. Who knows though. All right, great stuff from Dan Rubin. Again, thanks to Dan for his hard work last week, and Dan will be with you again tomorrow with the Dean and Poobah, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's going to be must-watch TV, must-listen podcast. Thanks to Dan. Thanks to all of you. Appreciate the vibrant chat, the questions, the comments, and thanks to everybody who's listening to the show on the podcast-only version. Dan and I appreciate that very much. Again, Dan will be with you tomorrow with the Dean and the Poobah. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Go Bucks. Still basking.